Hello everyone, and welcome to Registrar Corp's webinar entitled FDA 101 for Medical Devices. My name is Jonathan Rhodes, a marketing specialist at Registrar Corp and today's moderator. The presentation will conclude with a live questions and answers session. If we run out of time, we are also happy to respond to your questions by email. You may submit a written question anytime during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your webinar screen. A recorded copy of this presentation will be sent to all registrants. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Marco Theobald holds a PhD in biology from the Justus Liebig University in Gießen, Germany. Dr. Theobald worked in a cancer research laboratory for 7 years. He joined Registrar Corp in 2009 and now acts as the director of Registrar Corp's medical device and drug divisions. Mirna Salmeron began her career with Registrar Corp in 2010, assisting companies with filing prior notices with the FDA. Ms. Salmeron has been working in Registrar Corp's medical device division for over 6 years now and serves as manager of Registrar Corp's medical device division. Dr. Theobald, Ms. Salmeron, and their team have assisted thousands of medical device clients with FDA regulations. Specialties of Registrar Corp's medical device division include unique device identifier regulations, electronic medical device reporting submissions, as well as import alerts and detention assistance. I'd like to go ahead and begin. Marco?
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and we'd like to start with the presentation. Okay, I will just start with a short overview of the topics of the presentation. We will talk about the definition of a medical device and the classification. We will also talk about the registration and listing, the process, the required information, and the FDA user fee. Another part will be the UDI or Unique Device Identifier. What are the compliance dates? Who is responsible? What information needs to go into the global unique device identifier database. Other regulations that may have also an impact on your medical devices or in addition are required to your medical device registration. We will talk about eMDRs, electronic medical device reports, and also the services that Registrar Corp can provide for you. Let's start with the FDA definition of a medical device. FDA defines a medical device as an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, conveyance, implant, in vitro reagent, or other similar or related article, including a component, part, or accessory, which is intended for use in the diagnosis of diseases or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals, or intended to affect the structure or any function of the body of man or other animal. I will combine the last very small written sentence here because now we have a clear limit and border between a medical device and a drug. Further down, it is important that the primary intended purpose is not achieved through a chemical action on your skin or in your body. So everything that has a chemical reaction as the primary intended use or your metabolize, or it is metabolized in your system, then we are really talking about a drug. So there is a clear difference in between a medical device and a drug. We have some samples of medical devices on that picture, and the US FDA also classifies, for example, in the middle you see sunglasses as a medical device. So if you are in the sunglass industry or glasses industry and you manufacture them or you are importing them into the US, also medical device registration and listing of the products is required. also other simple devices like a toothbrush is classified by FDA as a medical device, or a cotton swab. That's another simple one. I like to jump over to the label here, because the label is very important and can make a difference between if you have a medical device or you don't have a medical device. So the term label refers to everything that is written and comes with the product. FDA is using the word accompanying the product. Accompanying is a very broad and wide used term by the FDA. So it really does include everything that you're using for marketing or promoting of your device, like brochures, like flyers for a trade show, even your website. All that is covered under the term label. Going back to what we saw before, like the cotton swab, I like to use that as an example. If you just label them and you say they are used for cosmetic only, then we are not talking about a medical device. But if you have other claims on your label, you say, oh, you can use these cotton swabs to apply an ointment, or to disinfect or clean a scratch in your skin or wound, then you are making medical claims, and you're bringing really your cotton swabs up into the medical device area. That is just one example where the label and the claims that you're making are very important. Also, the claims, if you have a medical device, it can make a big difference what class your device falls into. So if you're, for example, making claims for your device in direction of a cure of really, and you're saying it will prevent, for example, a heart attack, or it will really increase the blood flow or something like that, we are talking about naming medical conditions, and that could be also a big difference if you have a class 1 or a class 2 device. So the labeling is really important, and also the claims that you are making on the label or on every other written product that goes with your device. So we talked about a little bit about the classes. FDA has 3 risk classes, and I like to start with class 1, which is the lowest risk class. And in that class, you will find things like the sunglasses, like the cotton swab, band-aids. All these are class 1 devices. Most of these devices are exempt from what we say a 510K filing. What that is on the next slide, so give me a little bit here. As I said, exempt from the 510K are sunglasses, band-aids, or, for example, dental floss. But still, there are some, even if it's a class 1 lowest risk class, some devices are required to have these 510K clearance. And for example, examination gloves or a mechanical wheelchair. So what is a 510K? The 510K is a pre-market notification, which is an application to the FDA to demonstrate that your device is as safe and effective, or the term that FDA is using, substantially equivalent to an already legally marketed device here in the US. So you would pick a competitor device that you know very well, and based on the data, you would provide FDA and show FDA that your device is as good, at least maybe better, than the device that is already on the market. And when FDA has reviewed these data that you send in, FDA will send you a letter and that clears your device. After you have that letter from the FDA, you can start selling your device here in the US. Not before. You have really to wait till that clearance letter is in your mail at the end. Then we have the class 2 devices. This is the middle risk class. In addition to the class 1, you have general controls and special controls for these devices. Pre-market notification is really required for most of them. Type of devices in this class are glucose monitoring kits, pregnancy kit. We have also some devices, even if it's a class 2, a higher risk class, that are exempt from that 510K burden or the 510K clearance letter, like an AC powered adjustable hospital bed or mercury thermometer. So because these devices are already for a long time on the market, and FDA does not see the urge really to look into these anymore, because the quality is usually on a high standard. So FDA decided more to focus on critical devices like glucose meter kits and these kind of devices. Then we have the highest risk class, which is the class 3 devices. To market a class 3 device in the US, you are required to have what is called a pre-market approval. And this is the only device that is really approved by the FDA. And this is the only time that you should use the word approval. It's only that device in a class 3. Your registration of your company or a class 1 or class 2 device is not approved by the FDA. It's only a class 3 device. A class 3 device, for example, is a surgical laser or a PSA test. There are no exemptions on that one. You need to have that pre-market approval. The pre-market approval is really, how should I say, an extended 510K, because you have also to provide scientific data that your device is safe and effective to the FDA. And then FDA will look in it and really will approve these devices. That might also go down because you have a new technology, even if there are similar devices out there, but you change the technology. So that could be a trigger that your device falls into a class 3. On that slide is a summary of who needs to register, list, and pay the FDA user fee. We have manufacturers. Even if you are a contract manufacturer, you are not developing the device, you still need to register your company. You need to list the devices that you're manufacturing for the US market. Same for repackager, relabeler. You are buying devices from a manufacturer and you change the label, you change the packaging. All that requires registration and listing of the product and paying the FDA user fee. Also, foreign exporters are required to do that. US importers are required to do a registration. The only exception here is a US importer does not list the devices that they are importing as a listing. However, on the account, it's not a public information. They have to identify their business partners, means the manufacturer or foreign exporter, and what product they are bringing in, but that is not a public functions that would require registration would be a remanufacturer of medical devices. And maybe I can add here, remanufacturing means that you are really changing a device. You are not refurbishing a device. Refurbishing means that you just clean a device, you recalibrate a device, and you are selling it. Refurbishing means that you might add additional functions. You change really the specifications from the original manufacturer. So if you are doing that, that would be called remanufacturing and would also require registration and listing. Reprocessor of single device, specification developer, or even US manufacturer of export-only devices, contract sterilizers. All these functions require FDA registration and listing. On that slide is a quick overview over the process. If you never have an FDA registration, or you're just thinking of starting here in the US, that is the flow chart how to start. So the first thing is you have to pay the FDA user fee for 2019, beginning in nearly 2 weeks, October 1st. The fee will be $4,884. That is a special account you have to create and where you do the payment. The real registration is a different system. So you just to make that clear, FDA has 2 software systems or web pages in place. One is only for paying the user fee, and then the second one is for the registration and the listing of your products. If you do that the first time, you have to register your device establishment with the physical address where you're really manufacturing a device, not using your headquarter or a PO box on that one. In addition, you have to designate an official correspondent. Also, if you are a non-US company, a foreign establishment, you have also to designate a US agent. The next step would be the listing of your medical devices. And during that process, at the end, FDA will automatically assign what's called a device listing number. That number is very important and is used for import into the US. So you should definitely keep a printout of these numbers. Also assigned at the end is what is called the owner-operator number. And you can start doing business, means you might be located in Europe and you want to send medical devices into the US. You can use your owner-operator number to start business. Most likely your customs broker would ask you what is called the registration number. The registration number assignment can take up to 90 days, sometimes even beyond that. And it's totally up to the FDA, to their workload. So there might be a delay on that end. But you can definitely start your business when you have your owner-operator number. When the registration number is assigned down the road, then switch over and use on your shipping documents the registration number instead of the owner-operator number. The official correspondent, the person is designated by the owner-operator and is responsible for the annual registration of the establishment. Also, updates should be done during the year. So FDA really requires to keep the data on the account as current as possible. So if you add new devices that you are manufacturing for the US market, please do updates during the year. Also, you are required to identify your business partners here in the US, or vice versa. your manufacturer, if you're an US importer outside of the US, please keep these information as current as possible, because we have seen that FDA is detaining shipments because that identification on the accounts is not made correctly. Also, one other functions of the official correspondent is receipt of correspondence from the FDA to the owner or the establishment, function as a link between the FDA and the company. The US agent, that is a function that's only for foreign establishments. Background here is that the FDA would like to have someone here in the US they can reach out to if they have questions. The agent must have a physical address here in the US, a place of business here in the US. The US agent cannot use a PO box, or you cannot use any kind of answering service. FDA wants to have a human picking up the phone and at least have some basic information about the company, and that should be possible during normal US business hours. This is also one of our main services that Registrar Corp is providing to our non-US clients. So the responsibilities for a US agent would be the communication and helping if FDA plans to inspect your facility outside of the US. Also, answers with the FDA are oftentimes sensitive, so many documents by the FDA requires a response in 15 days. So it is really important for you to have a US agent that is quick with informing you if FDA has requests. On the next slide, we are starting with the unique device identifier. That will be rough overview because there are a lot of specific things that we cannot really cover all, but we would like to give you an overview. If you have questions, you can reach out to us at any time. So the FDA issued the final rule for the unique device identifier on September 24th in 2013 and made it mandatory that most medical devices have to carry that identifier on the label. And the reason for that is that FDA likes really to track a medical device from the place where it is manufactured to the place where it is used. So who is responsible for that UDI to be on the label? And FDA has made the labeler responsible for the UDI. And the definition is the labeler is responsible for the UDI and GUDID compliance. FDA defines labeler as the person who causes a label to be applied to a device or who causes the label to be modified with the intent that the device will be introduced into interstate commerce without any subsequent replacement or modification of the label. That most likely means, with more simple words, that if you're the brand owner and your company name is on the label, most likely you are the labeler and you are responsible for the UDI requirements. Even if you are maybe not the manufacturer of the device, but the label of the device states your company, it's your brand name, then you are responsible for the UDI regulation. The UDI is a barcode like we see here. What you see here, it's called a GUDID barcode. The barcode has different parts. So just the lines, the thicker and thinner lines in the background, it's the machine readable part. The numbers, the black numbers below, are the human readable part. And also then you have the red and the blue part. The red part is called the device identifier. This is the first part, and this is called the GUDID. That part identifies your company and also the medical device down to the version or model. Then the blue part is called the production identifier. The production identifier can have different information like a lot or batch number. It could be a serial number, the expiration date or the manufacturing date, or a combination out of that. So the first part, the red part, that is also an information that FDA requires you to submit into the global UDI database. The blue part, the production identifier, is not going into that database. FDA has only checkboxes. FDA is only interested in what information you are using on that part of the barcode. So there's a checkbox for a lot or a batch number or for an expiration date, and you just say yes or no. The actual blue part, production identifier information, are stored at your facility in case of an inspection. FDA is not providing you with these kind of barcodes. So you can get these barcodes from one of what FDA called issuing agencies. And FDA has accredited 3 agencies that you can work with. The first one is GS1, the second one is HIPIC, and the third one is ICBA. The third one is also the smallest one, and they are more focusing on devices and everything that has to do with human cells, blood plasma, everything that is related to blood. So if you, for example, are a Sun class manufacturer, ICBA would not be the right agency to deal with. They would more likely turn you down and say, please go to GS1 or to ICBA. Here is an overview over the UDI Compliance Dates, and that is a point that makes the regulation a little bit harder to understand. So as I mentioned before, FDA came up with the final regulation in 2013. A year later, September 24th in 2014, all Class 3 devices were already required to have a UDI on their label. In September 24, 2015, all Class 2 devices, or not Class 2 devices, but most of them are Class 2 devices. Every device that is life-supporting, life-sustaining, or implementable are required since then to have a UDI on the label. In September 2016, we had the next compliance date for Class 2 devices in general. Because of some special circumstances and feedback from the industry, FDA has also granted some extensions to special product codes. At the moment, we have 32, and the compliance date for these extended product codes now is September 24th, 2021. So actually, September 24th, 2018, just a couple of days in the future, that was the original compliance date for Class 1 devices. Also, that date was pushed back from the FDA to give the industry more time to comply with these regulations. So the new compliance date here is September 24th, 2024, Class 1 devices. Where to place these UDIs? The UDI has to be in human readable part, which are the numbers, and the machine readable part on the label and the packaging, and for certain devices on the device itself. On the device itself, it's called direct marking of a device, and that applies only to devices that are used more than once and reprocessed before each use. Reprocessing in the definition of the FDA is a high sterilizing process. So for example, if you have a thermometer and you just clean that with an alcohol swipe, that is not reprocessing. But if you have instruments that you are using in the operation room, like scalpels, scissors, pliers, all these kind of instruments going through a high sterilization process, and that would really called, or per FDA definition, reprocessing. And these are typical devices that would fall under the direct marking obligation. Also, FDA applies, or in the regulation requires a UDI for higher packaging. So it's not only that you have a UDI on the base package, everything that you also have as an order number in higher packaging numbers, we will see that on the next slide here, would require a UDI. So for example, you have a catheter here, which is the base package, and you create a UDI for that. Since one catheter is not very much, and if you think on a hospital, they are using them constantly. So you have packages in that example. There's a package of 30 in one big box. This is a box that has your label and that someone can order. So that is called higher packaging, and that blue box would also require an own UDI. Same thing for the green box below. It's a different number. You have 50 catheter there. So also that box would most likely have your brand name, your information, and an order number. And the yellow box on the right-hand side, it's even a bigger box where you have 12 blue boxes inside. So in that constellation, you have to create 4 UDI numbers for your higher packaging. No UDI barcodes are required for shipping containers, as you see for the paper box, the pallet, or the shipping containers. You don't need UDIs for these one. FDA requires that you submit the UDI into a database, which is called the Global Unique Device Identification Database. This is a public database. It's public since May 2015. Around April, FDA told us they have approximately 1.6 million entries in that database, and it's constantly rising numbers. There is no registration necessary. It's a public database. You can go in and you can search for a company name, for products. You can, if you have the UDI number, you can also put in the UDI number, and you can get a lot of information about that device. No patient data are in that database. So here is an overview over the mandatory GUDID information that is going into the database per submission, per UDI that you submit. There's a total of 55 fields, but these are the mandatory fields. That means you need to have a yes, at least a yes or no on these fields to be able to save your information and to submit it to the FDA. The reason, because you see two colors here, the red ones are called also new UDI triggers. That means, for example, if you change the brand name for FDA, that change is that important, you should also submit a new UDI for that brand name change. Overall, to help the industry a little bit and to lift the burden a little bit, FDA has some general exceptions to the UDI regulation. For example, Class 1 devices are not required to include the production identifier in the UDI part. If you think you would benefit from that, you can definitely do it, but FDA does not mandatory make it as a requirement for you. Also, devices that are finished and labeled prior to the compliance date can be sold for the next 3 years without a UDI on the label. That is especially only for Class 1 devices. There are quite a number of product codes in the Class 1. These devices are exempt from the good manufacturing practice. If you manufacturing devices, for example, a manual toothbrush, then you are also exempt from the UDI because your product is exempt from the good manufacturing practice. Also, devices that are solely for research, teaching, chemical analysis, and not intended for clinical use are exempt from the UDI. Custom and investigational devices exempt. Individual single-use devices have also a little bit kind of a break here. The UDI is only going on the label, not on the single devices in the package. Combination products with an NDC number are exempt. Veterinary medical devices are exempt from the UDI regulation. Devices that are for export outside of the US, and also the exception of the shipping container. And here is a quick summary of the steps that you need to do to be in compliance with the UDI. The first step is you need to check if you have a DUNS number. A DUNS number is provided by Duns & Bradstreet. There is no charge for that because it is for registration purpose with the FDA. You need, in most cases, the GMDN, it's the Global Medical Device Nomenclature Number, or what FDA calls a preferred term code. You need the UDI or the barcode. You need to contact one of the FDA accredited agencies. You need to collect all the mandatory device information and then submit these information into the GUDID database. And last but not least, you have to update your labels with the UDI. And now I will reach over to my colleague for the detentions.
Thank you, Marco, for that presentation. My name is Myrna, and we're going to now talk about a few other topics, such as detention. So here at Registrar Corp, we help a lot with detentions. We work hand in hand with custom brokers, importers, manufacturers to get shipments released. We will give guidance, collect required information, and we submit all of this to the FDA officer. the one thing that we always ask when assisting with FDA with detentions is notice of action, also known as a NOA. This is issued to the U.S. importer of record, and it'll state why the product is being detained. And this is very important because that is the piece of document that we will study, and it will also have the information of the FDA officer that we can contact on your behalf. Common issues, common reasons why there is detentions. Number one here is when the device listing number is missing. This is actually very common. FDA wants to see this device listing number on the commercial invoices, so that is very, very important. Sometimes the establishment registration number is missing, or a company is actually not even registered. Maybe the product is not listed, but all of this is actually on the notice of action, and that is when we go ahead and assist you with getting this together. One other very common that we've noticed a lot lately is that sometimes the importer is not identifying the manufacturer, or the manufacturer is not identifying the importer on the registration. So that is very important. Also, sometimes there's issues on the labels. As Marco indicated earlier in the presentations, your claims on the label are very important to determine if it's a medical device or not. So the information provided on the label is very important. Here at Registrar Corp, we also provide assistance with other FDA regulations, such as drugs registration and listings. There's a lot of cases where we have combination products where you have a medical device and a drug product, such as first aid kits. We also assist with radiation emitting devices. For example, for radiation emitting devices, your product must comply with two independent sets of regulations. It must comply with radiation safety regulations specified under the CFR and described with these web pages. Separately, it must comply with device regulations, which may include establishment registration, device listing, and pre-market notifications. Also very important is eMDR, Electronic Medical Device Reporting. FDA requires that importers and device manufacturers submit adverse event reports to the FDA in case of an incident. In the past, these reports could be sent in paper format. However, FDA now says that this must be submitted electronically. Therefore, you must have direct access to FDA via a gateway. And here at Registrar Corp, we already have this established. Therefore, we can submit these reports right away. And it's very important because these reports must be submitted within 30 calendar days when you are notified of an incident. Here we have more about eMDR. It is a very lengthy process, and like I said earlier, you only have 30 days, and only setting up the gateway can take a long time. You also have to have a software called eSubmitter, and you must go through the process of actually submitting a lot of data into the eSubmitter, and all of this takes time. And we are here to assist you with this. All we ask is that you send us the file so that we can submit it to the FDA. The FDA says that the file must be a certain way, so we will assist you all the way through. We also have the FDA Compliance Monitor, which is actually a really nice software where you can stay on top of recalls, import alerts, warning letters, anything with any other companies that you are currently working with. We have the FDA Compliance Monitor II. Users can view and monitor the FDA compliance history of your own company. You can view it for your suppliers, the distributors, and immediately email note for a change. Plus, you also have the option for the monthly report. medical device services here at Registrar Corp. So we will assist you with your establishment registration, creating the device listings, and helping you identify the actual product codes for this. We also include the GUDID service, detention assistance. We'll do the eMDR submissions, and of course the free monitoring system of your company. We also have the certificate of foreign government and the radiation emitting devices, and we also have a label review service. And as indicated earlier, your label, it is very important.
Thank you, Marco and Myrna, for that great presentation. Again, I'd like to announce that we will be sending a recorded copy of this webinar and a PDF copy of the presentation to all registrants. You may submit a written question anytime during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your webinar screen. So we'll begin taking questions now. Our first question comes from Henning. What does establishment mean?
An establishment will be your exact location, the facility that's actually performing the functions such as manufacturer or contract manufacturer. It's where FDA can come in and see what's taking place. For example, some companies make the mistake to add their headquarters, which is just an office, as the establishment, and that would not be correct. The establishment should be, for example, the location of the factory doing the manufacturing.
Thank you, Myrna. Our next question comes from Maud. How do I list a device to the FDA for a device which is part of a combination product, a drug plus device combination?
That's a very good question. When you try to list that product, you have first to identify the device part of it and to clarify the product code of that device. Then there's an option in the software where you can check and say that is a combination product. And it will open up a new field that shows you different options, what kind of combination product that is. You have to identify it. So it's not very complicated. It's just a little bit knowing how to do it in the file system.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question comes from Gary, and he asks, GUDID versus UDI. I'm assuming that means what is the difference between GUDID and UDI?
Okay, this is actually a very common question. So the GUDID is actually a system from the FDA where you go in and submit the actual UDI. So the UDI is the barcode, is the 14-digit barcode that you create with the issuing agency. And then this data, that number is submitted to the GUDID along with a lot of more information, such as that were described in one of the slides, such as the 510K number if available, the brand, or the model of the product.
Thank you, Myrna. Our next question comes from Henning. Is the user fee of $4,884 USD a one-time only fee, or is it annual?
That's a very good question, but it's an annual fee, unfortunately. So you have really to pay it every year. Most likely the amount will also change from year to year. So usually FDA is coming up with the new or the actual amount for the new fiscal year around August of every year.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question. Is there a list of devices that are exempt from the GMPs, the Good Manufacturing Practices?
Yes, there is a list on the FDA webpage, and to save you the hassle to find it, just send us an email and we will send you the link and the list as a PDF.
And that email you can reach us at is on your webinar screen. It is info@registrarcorp.com. Our next question. I don't fully understand the meaning of detention. Can you please specify?
Okay, detention means you have a shipment here to the US and it is held at the port of entry. At the port of entry, you have two agencies working together. That's the Customs Border Protection and the FDA. So the Customs Border part is they look into it if there are taxes on that product and what's going on. If it's possible to legally market that product here in the US and all that part. But they are also working with the FDA if these products are regulated by the FDA, which means it might be a medical device, might be a drug, tobacco products, food. Most likely, most foods, not all, but most foods are regulated by the FDA. So if you have one of these products, they will reach out to the FDA to make sure that the shipment or the products in the shipment also comply with the FDA regulations. If they see any thing that might be suspicious or do not have the full information, like a listing number, like a registration number for the manufacturer, then they will hold that shipment till they see the information.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question comes from Ashley. If we are just a repackager and our manufacturer has received 510K clearance, will our manufacturer have the device listing?
Actually, yes, the manufacturer has a device listing for it and a device listing number, but also you as a repackager, you need to do a listing. And you can use the 510K number of your manufacturer. You just need to have their authorization to use it, or you should just inform them that for FDA regulation purpose, you would like to use their 510K number.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question comes from Ivana. Is there a difference between U.S. agent and European representative as it is set by the MDD/MDR?
So the U.S. agent is only for FDA purposes. Unfortunately, we at this time are not assisting with European regulations.
Thank you, Myrna. Our next question comes from Claudia. Where can I get a UDI barcode?
So the UDI, FDA has accredited 3 agencies, and they are in one of the slides. One of the most common agencies is GS1. You will need to establish service with them, and they will assist you in the process of creating a UDI compliant barcode.
Thank you, Myrna. Our next question. For contact lenses, will the UDI have to be on every blister pack in the box, or can it be located on the outer packaging?
That's a very good question. And actually, contact lenses are at the moment have also an exemption on the compliance dates. There is a letter especially for contact lens manufacturers because your industry has already something in place that is very similar to the UDI, and FDA is looking into it. How they can use, or if there's a possibility to use that number system that you have in place already as a possible UDI, but no decision is made at the moment. If you like to send us an email, we can send you these letters that grant you the extension on the UDI.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question, I will take this question. What is the URL of the FDA Compliance Monitor? So the FDA Compliance Monitor is now part of a software suite provided by Registrar Corp called myfda.com. You can go straight to the information page on the monitor by going to www.fdamonitor.com. Our next question. We are currently registered with the FDA for the product we manufacture and sell a Class II product. We have just opened a subsidiary company to also market our product. Do we also have to register our subsidiary with the FDA?
Okay. Yes. Well, honestly, this would really depend on the location of this other company. For example, if it's a foreign establishment or if it's a U.S. If it's a U.S. importer, that would also be the importer of record. In this case, yes, they would need a FDA registration.
Thank you, Myrna. Our next question. I have heard FDA may classify a medical device accessory separately from a component. We manufacture wheelchair seat cushions. How do I know which one our device is?
Yes, so there is always, and we skipped that a little bit in the presentation because that is really deep in the regulation, the difference between what is a component, what is an accessory, in which cases there are own product code. In some cases, there's just one general and the component or the accessory will fall under the general main product code because FDA has not broken down these components or accessories. In case of the wheelchair, FDA has it really broken down in accessories, components, and on product codes. So there is a database from the FDA where you can search for product codes. And if you type in wheelchair cushion, you will see the product code for that one.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question comes from Francisco, and it asks about the UDI barcode. Can it be mounted in the vertical or horizontal position only?
Yeah, that is really up to you. FDA does not specify that. Also, we didn't mention that, but you saw the linear barcode, and you can also use other barcode types like a quick read or a two-dimensional one, because sometimes they can be smaller than the linear one. But still, you need also to have the number on the label, means the human readable part.
Thank you, Marco. Our next question, and this will be our final question. What are the requirements for an establishment to be exempt from good manufacturing practice inspections?
That just depends on the product. So if your product is exempt from the good manufacturing practices, like for manual toothbrushes, then there will no inspection for that one. It just depends on the product that you are manufacturing.
Thank you, Marco. So we are out of time, but you can send us additional questions anytime by email to info@registrarcorp.com or the email we have on the screen here, medicaldevices@registrarcorp.com. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for joining us today.